Hey, what's up guys? Yesterday we got a new build on the beta, which contains a lot of changes for all covenants for pretty much every class in the game. And Elemental and Enhancement, because I'm gonna focus on those two, they got quite a few changes, so let's go over them now. So this is the post they gave us with the generic changes. These changes are mainly on how the abilities work and not the actual numbers, but we'll go over the numbers soon. So first of all, Chain Harvest. It's now gonna ignore targets that are under crowd control with the damaging part, which is amazing because if you're doing a dungeon and you have one mob crowd controlled and then suddenly your beam would break it, that would be horrible. So it's a really good change. It's pretty much something they had to change anyway. Like, it's not like something that we didn't expect, but it's good that it's there anyway. They did a big change to Fate Transfusion as well. Now the amount of targets it heals is reduced from 8 to 4. So now it's the same amount of mobs that you deal damage to. And the damage done by it is now split evenly to up to 4 targets. Also, Enhancement will get 1 stack of Maelstrom weapon for fully channeling the ability, which the AoE component of this ability is just gone now. I don't see the point of AoE on this ability now, and I really don't see the point of 1 stack of Maelstrom weapon for Enhancement Shaman. It would make more sense if, since the ability damage-wise is quite weak, if they would literally give us 5 stacks, like he gets 5 stacks over the duration of the channel, but we're getting 1 stack. It's completely useless / worthless in my eyes, but at least it's something. And then Primordial Wave has been changed to be an instant cast ability, which should make the ability much easier to use in all situations, and has received a number of bug fixes. This is amazing because, to me, at least as enhancement, I'm still probably not gonna pick it, but it felt very bad to use as enhancement because you're just suddenly doing a full cast in melee. It makes no sense. Now for Elemental, this is also a nice change, since for Elemental you'll actually probably use this a lot more. Now I'm gonna go over the damage numbers changes. There's a few pretty big ones. I'll show you a spreadsheet later. Basically, it's a spreadsheet where I can see the damage numbers of all the abilities compared on how many targets. But Fate Transfusion damage increased from 69% to 140% of spell power, times 3 divided by a half, so in total it's like 414 or something. But basically, when I read this, I was very happy, but then I realized it's now split amongst all the enemies. So on 4 targets, it's pretty much useless. Like, this is the damage that it did. If it would still spread the damage, 140% is the damage it would do on 2 targets. So now it's a pretty big nerf, I guess. It's a pretty big buff single target, but there's no AoE to it anymore, which is really sad. Then Chain Harvest, they buffed the damage from 345% to 414% of spell power, which is really nice. Chain Harvest was already kind of up and coming, especially on AoE it was good, but now it's even better. Then Fate Transfusion is the same thing. Primordial Wave, nothing changed except that it's now instant cast. And then Vasper Totem, they nerfed it from 85% damage, 95% damage every time you do an ability, to 81% damage. It's a nerf. It was kind of needed, but this pretty much brings things closer together. Now there's a few things in game that I want to show you. Chain Harvest, for enhancement, it used to consume the stacks of Maelstrom weapon to make it instant cast, but it wouldn't increase the damage. And now it does increase the damage, which is pretty insane when you think about it, because it's just double damage basically, but it's balanced around not having this. So I don't know if they're gonna change this, but basically, let me show you. I'm gonna do the ability hardcast first. It's hitting for 4.3k, and this hits 5 enemies. So 4.3k, 5 enemies, that's 20k every 1.5 minutes. Now let's wait until the ability is back. Okay, the ability is back, so now let's build 5 Maelstrom weapon stacks and let's use the ability again, and then you'll see the damage difference. One thing to note is there is a conduit. I can't show it on this character because I made this just to show the abilities, but there is a conduit that increases the damage per Maelstrom weapon by even more than 20%, which is it right now, which means this Chain Harvest ability will only scale more and more once we get those conduits. But let me build 5 Maelstrom stacks and show you. Okay, so now it should do about 8k damage. Oh, 2 times 17k damage. Okay, look at this. 43k damage. Or, well, 34.6k damage. And it only hits 2 targets. This is insane. I mean, obviously it crit. but it would do 8k damage by default, which would mean 5 times 8k damage, that's 40k damage in one ability. Which is pretty fucking insane, but I'll show you the spreadsheet after, which will show you how insane it actually is. I don't know how they're gonna balance this, but we'll see. So now let me show you how they changed Fae Transfusion. It still scales with Mastery for Enhancement Shaman, which is really nice. So you would think like, oh, it's gonna scale later in the expansion, but again, I'll show you after this on the spreadsheet. So now it says it will do 10,000 damage, split amongst 4 enemies. So see how disappointing that is? 13.6k damage. The cooldown is longer than the cooldown of the Venthyr ability. And it 13.6k damage, which, by the way, this is the same damage on single target. Which means that the other ability did more damage in one hit, one crit, than this ability just did in its entirety. So yeah, Fae Transfusion is pretty much dead. When I saw the change of the extra damage from Fae Transfusion, I was pretty hyped because I was like, oh, it might be the best one. But they just ruined the ability? I don't know. Like, I don't know what their plan was with this. Maybe they're gonna do more changes. And then Vasper Totem stayed exactly the same, just slightly less damage. But now, let me go into the spreadsheet. The spreadsheet might look very confusing. I'm gonna try to only pay attention to the graphs and I'll try to explain. So, it's a lot of numbers, but don't worry about it. None of this stuff you have to worry about. The only thing you have to know is here, this bottom bar is Mastery. So at the end you have 50% Mastery, at the start you have 0% Mastery. This is because Night Fae scales with Mastery. Like, don't look at this one. This one is the enhancement one. Let me make it bigger. But yeah, the only setting I'm going to change is the amount of targets. Actually, this color might be hard to see, but I think the quality of the video should be good enough. But the only thing I'm going to change is the amount of targets. So on single target, the best ability is Kyrian, still. The second best ability is Venthyr with the conduit. Or like, Kyrian is also with the conduit. But look how little behind it is. Like, remember this for when I increase the amount of targets. Night Fae becomes the best ability single target only once you go over, what is this, 34% mastery? And that is on single target. And that's not taking into account that you have to channel for 3 seconds. Now let me change the amount of mobs to 2. See this? Venthyr hits 5 targets. And on 2 targets, as enhancement, if you use Maelstrom weapon. Look how far it is above Kyrian with the conduit. And then look how Night Fae kind of falls off. Now, 3 targets. Look how useless Night Fae becomes. Kyrian is decent, but look at this. Just because of the 100% buff with the Maelstrom weapon. Venthyr is just... This is DPS, by the way. This is like divided by the cooldown. Because if it would be per use, this would look very different. But yeah, look at this. It's just way higher. It's more than double on 3 targets. Then 4 targets, it just keeps going higher and higher. 5 targets. At 5 targets, it's 3-4 times stronger than Kyrian with conduit. Like if you have the conduit for both maxed. Then 6 targets, Kyrian is going to catch up a little bit, but it's useless. Which means that for enhancement right now, if they don't change anything, Venthyr is by far the best one. Like, look at this, on single target, it's only slightly behind. There is no reason why you would ever not go this, from what I can see. And this is not even scaled with crit. This is with 10% base crit. Let me... I made it... Oh, actually, this is 10% base crit. I can change it so the mastery doesn't scale and the crit scales. Okay, so what I did now is I changed this bar. Don't look at what it says mastery and then these values. But I changed it to be crit. The left side is 10% crit. And the right side is 60% crit. You'll probably never get 60% crit. But this is done because Venthyr scales with crit, since the cooldown gets reduced every time you crit on an ally. Also, I made it so that it counts as if you always hit 5 people. So you could hit 1 enemy and 4 allies in a dungeon, for example. And then it would like have the chance 5 times to reset or lower the cooldown by 5 seconds. So this is why you see it go higher and higher. But look at this. This is single target. If you get like, this would be like 30% crit maybe? About 30% crit. It's even higher than the rest of them. So on single target, look how insane it is. 2 targets, gets even higher. 3 targets, 4 targets, 5 targets. Yeah, it's pretty insane. And it scales pretty damn hard. Now, if you look at these green values, this is for enhancement as well. Pretty much most of the time, Venthyr just stays in the green because it's like the highest values. Now let's take a look at Elemental. Elemental works slightly different because Night Fae does not scale with Mastery, obviously. And they have another thing that it scales with, which is Master of the Elements. So you can see here, this is pure single target, like I'm setting it here. This one target. You can see Kyrian DPS is the highest. Night Fae is actually not that far behind if you would use Master of the Elements. Otherwise, it's still behind, but you know. Night Fae is also kind of a contender for single target. But the second you go to 2 targets, let's see. Night Fae goes lower, Venthyr goes higher. 3 targets. So the reason why only at 3 targets Venthyr and Kyrian does about the same DPS is because Elemental does not have Maelstrom weapon stack, so they don't increase the damage by 100% of the ability. But look at this, on Elemental, you need to be at 3 targets to have the Kyrian DPS, the Kyrian ability do as much damage as the Venthyr ability. And this is assuming that they both have the max conduit for the ability. And the thing is, Kyrian won't have the max of that ability for a long ass time. Same with Venthyr, but I mean, if Kyrian has a weaker ability, look how low Kyrian is without the conduit, and look how high Venthyr is without the conduit. So Venthyr is way higher. Now let's pop it up to 4 targets. 4 targets, Venthyr is the best. 5 targets, Venthyr is still the best. So for Elemental, it's not as straightforward. Kyrian is still kind of a contender if you would go with max conduits. Night Fae is just, I don't even know what Night Fae is. It's completely useless. And Venthyr, if you do more AoE content, I think Venthyr might be better. You have to remember, these are pure DPS values. So this is the damage it does divided by the cooldown. This does not take into account, for example, Night Fae, you have to channel for 2.7 seconds or 3 seconds. It does not take it into account, because in that time you could cast another Lava Burst, you could do a Storm Strike, you could do a lot of things in those 3 seconds. So it does not take it into account. Venthyr, however, for enhancement, it's instant. So for Venthyr, it doesn't matter too much, since it now actually works with Maelstrom. And for Kyrian, it's also, you don't really have a cost. The one thing I didn't put on here is the Maldraxus ability, mainly because it's really hard to put in numbers how much damage it does. So I don't want to put it on a sheet where you just see the raw DPS values. But anyway, if you have any questions about this, or if you maybe want to have a copy of this, I could actually, if you guys want, make a view-only copy that you can then copy and then you can change some values. I shouldn't have anything wrong in the calculations, but if something is wrong in the calculations, just tell me and I'll change it. Anyway, thanks for watching the video. Honestly, I'm kind of happy that Kyrian is maybe not gonna be the best one, because now that this ability works with Maelstrom, I actually really like this ability, compared to before where it was just a waste of Maelstrom. But I guess we'll have to see. They'll probably do more balance changes, because if they let Night Fae go live like this, it's completely useless. Before this it was maybe kind of useful in AoE, but now it's just completely useless. But anyway, thanks for watching the video, guys, and I'll hope to see you next time.